Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Lead left, grow right, and we are here with the owner once again, talking all about leadership and the ways that Tony Marolt can help you. We are live here on Zoom as well as on the podcast once again. So welcome back to the show. How are you today?
I am doing terrific. How about you?
I'm doing great. So tell us a little bit about your company and exactly what you do, from the publishing aspect to the consulting aspect and so much more. If you don't mind giving us a little recap in a sense of how you can help our listeners today. And then I know we have some great things lined up as well.
Right. Well, my name is Tony Marolt. I am the chief leader and president of Lead Left, Grow Right, a company I started about 6 years ago. And as you said, it deals primarily in two areas of consulting: leadership and integrative process management or systems management. And I have tried to use all of the experience from my time in the military, which was 9+ years in the Navy, as well as 25+ years in the corporate environment in a variety of positions, to bring some heft to not only the consultancy, but also to the book I've written called The Leadership Quotient.
Beautiful. And if we want to get in touch with you, tell us the website.
It's Lead Left, Grow Right, all one word, leadleftgrowright.com. Or you can send an email to me at tony.marolt@gmail.com, or on the website, simply use the contact form, and that'll be routed right to my email, and I will respond as quickly as possible. And I encourage people to, even if it's not a live broadcast, live in the sense that we're taking phone calls and texts, etc., please text me or please email me so that I'd be more than glad. My mission is to enhance people's potential, both on the leadership and the process side. So please shoot those to me. I would love to entertain those and potentially include those in future podcasts or video casts.
And I know for today, we're going to talk a little bit about depending upon yourself and really, how to, I guess, how we say, strengthen, right? I would say strengthening the muscle memory. But before so, let's recap a little about last week. I know there's some things that you want to share with our listeners about that famous leadership quote to start.
Sure. The leadership quote, and I have it above my head for those of you watching, is from Lao Tzu. And it essentially is telling you to be there, support people, but not be an impediment to them.
Yeah.
And at the end of all those fruitful leadership development skills, and you imparting them to your teams and peers, then they will just believe that they did it themselves, which is what you ultimately want to get to. And then we also talked about two books I highly, highly recommend that were highly influential for me. One called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, and the other called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Constantly Is Talking by Susan Cain. And you'll see a lot of what's in those books. It'll be welded and melded within the framework of the book, because Fierce Conversations is about having real or authentic conversations, and too often we don't have that, and especially in today's world right now, where there's a lot of political divide. People are afraid to ask each other, hey, here's what I'm thinking, what can you think? So we've lost some of the amount of discourse, that honest discourse, and that's what Fierce Conversations is about. And Quiet's really a book for both extroverts and introverts to get to know how introverts work in the workplace, at home, etc. And that's highly influential in terms of these skills that I'm presenting, both from an extrovert side as well as an introvert. And again, to refresh people's memory, introversion and extroversion are about your energy. It's not about whether you're shy or quiet or things like that we stereotype within society.
Great. So that's Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, Quiet the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. That's by Susan Cain, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. And speaking of your book, I know the theme for today is the depend on yourself to help strengthen our muscle memory. And that is part of your book, helping to build that individual self-confidence. Would you mind, I guess, starting the groundwork for this? And how do you become a great leader since you are the expert? Would love to hear about this.
Sure. So last time we talked about my Marvel T-shirt, and I made the observation that
it's a great
the Marvel
conversational piece. Yes, it was like, hey, and you did that on purpose.
I do almost everything on purpose because my personality type is all about teaching people to fish. So we talked about superheroes being very close to the kind of leadership I espouse, because you don't have positional leaders that are the most influential on a team. And superhero teams, they instinctively know what to do. They've worked with each other, etc. And so to bridge that gap today, you can't see it fully, but I'm wearing a Stan Lee Marvel T-shirt. And Stan Lee, I've been reading, I'm about halfway through his biography, and Stan Lee was an editor at his comic company when he was 16 or 17. So if you think you can't lead, you absolutely can lead, and it doesn't really matter what your age is.
There's no limits. Everything is endless. I love to hear that, though, because as we get older, we always say, wish we would have known what I know now, what I know then, what I know now, right? Because
absolutely,
right, with age, there is a certain sense of wiseness that comes over us. But to have someone who's wiser, older, to look up to, who could teach you these things at that time in your life when you need it, is so valuable. It would make you that much of a better leader, right?
Right.
And
well,
it's possible.
Go ahead, Jill.
No, I said that's possible to have someone like yourself train.
That's why ideally, I think we should be driving leadership skills into everything from elementary grade on through college and into corporate or nonprofit America. And I'm actually working with a good friend of mine who also has a vested interest in leadership over the years. And so we're looking at what kinds of skills can we package to be able to do that, to bring it to people that are pre-college. Because if you learn it pre-college, once you learn a leadership skill, it kind of stays with you forever. Now you have to practice it, and I think that's something I mentioned last time. So I use the analogy, if you have a closet and you've arranged all of these different leadership skills on hangers, well, the only way you're ever going to get good at a skill is to practice it. And because not every single thing will work for you that's outlined in a leadership quotient, for instance, at every given time, what I recommend is that you take out some of these skills that are included in the book and try them on and see how they work. Practice them for a while. See if it feels natural or it can be made to feel more natural. And if it just doesn't work for you, put it back in the closet and try another one.
Yeah, not a bad idea, right? Got to keep trying and trying. So you talk about this, taking the leadership skill out of the closet and trying them on, right? So practicing to see what's really a good fit. Can you talk a little bit more about why that really is important and really what it can allow you to do, Tony?
Sure. I found that a lot of my college students really weren't ready for things like interviewing or the purpose of interviewing. And so it's a huge leadership skill, one, to be able to interview, and two, to be able to be the interviewer when you get later. So what I would have them do, and it was amazing to me, they were just stymied. They couldn't do it. I would position myself at the front of the class, and I'd put a desk there, and I'd say, okay, come on in. I'm going to do a hiring process for you. And they came in and sat on the chair, and I asked them, so what are some questions you might have about the company? They didn't really know. If I threw some questions at them, they really didn't know. So it's one thing to take a resume class, for instance, or an interviewing class. But unless you practice and practice those skills, even if it's in a mirror, you can't get better at it. And so that's the same thing with each of the leadership uh, attributes that I'm trying to impart to folks through the book to consider. And I tend to give you case studies so that you can see how things aren't supposed to work,
Yeah.
or maybe how they are to work, and then you can then apply that to your own leadership suite.
Ooh, awesome, awesome. So again, you got to take the action. You have to try it on. I like
Right.
that because what's that saying? If at first you don't succeed, try, try, try again. But we do get discouraged and people can have a fear and anxiety. What would you say to someone who's just hesitant to take that leap of faith and to try it? How do you, get that mental positivity in their head, Tony?
Well, one of the ways I think is you look to leaders that have done it themselves. And if you look at Abraham Lincoln, I mean, he grew up in poverty. He ran for the House, I think, I don't know how many times, so it's an exorbitant enough number. And every time he kept getting knocked down, he would bounce back up and eventually ended up as the president of the United States. Another example I tell people to that try again that you just mentioned is when the light bulb was being invented, Edison had to try 1,000 times, actually over 1,000 times, before he could find the right filament that wouldn't just blow up on him. 1,000 times, think about that. And so one is by having these examples of people that didn't give up, that kept on trying, and each time they try, you learn a little bit more. One of the things I say in the book is, one of my quotes is, it's about failing forward, not failing in place. It's okay, absolutely okay to fail, but fail forward. Learn something from that, adjust it, and then try again. Don't just try to do the same thing over and over again, because I think Einstein has attributed if you do the same thing over and over again and you don't get any different result, that's kind of stupid is really what it is. So.
Got it. Well, also let's talk about your experience in the Navy. Clearly you have leadership experience beyond belief and you were a boss, Mr. Tyrannical. What is
Yes.
that your nickname?
No.
Wait,
I hope not.
Were you a tyrant or did I read that wrong?
No. That was my boss. And
Got it.
Mr. Tyrannical, Mr. Tyrannical was the son of like a famous surgeon. His two older brothers were doctors. And so he had this inferiority complex. And he would just ream on people all of the time. Nothing was ever right. And he was so terrible, both to me and to my team. An example, for instance, as I came in one day in the Navy, you have every so many days, typically 3 or 4, you stand duty because someone's got to make sure that the ship or the submarine doesn't sink at the pier. So you have stand watch section. So I came in one day and he had watch the night before, and he had taken everything he found from every space on the ship, shoved it in my room so that I could not even open my door. So as a result of that, my folks, they were serious. They said, Lieutenant, do you want us to throw him overboard when we go off on our 8-month deployment?
Wow.
And they were serious. And as I say, while it was tempting to have them do that, I just suffered through it, but I learned a lot about myself. And there was a quote I think we covered last time about there's 2 things that you can do when you're exposed to a fire. You can either melt or anneal. Anneal being making a metal stronger through the process of heat. And so I encourage people, as we talk in this chapter about muscle memory and becoming stronger, that's one of the ways that you do it is you have difficult experiences and you fail forward, learn from that, and you anneal rather than melt. Because it's very easy when you're getting slammed day after day and being told you're not good or whatever the abuser, in this case I'll call them, is doing to you, you just take it and say, okay, I'm not going to make that same mistake when I'm in that position. I'm going to do it this way, etc. You start forming things that hopefully will change the course for your life and for others, so that no one has to be encountered with someone like that in the future.
Got it. And you say you always have two choices, right? When being exposed to a flame, melt
Yep.
or anneal.
Or anneal. Yep. So, so the examples are, what about lead, or what about aluminum? If you expose them to a decent amount of heat, doesn't even have to be super high, they're going to melt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you expose iron to heat and you temper it, it's going to become stronger and stronger as you do that. And so that's the kind of people we want to develop, and that's the kind of leaders we want to develop. So be iron, don't be steel, or don't be lead or aluminum. It'll serve you well.
Got it. Well, also want to point out here, the lifelong learner, right? That's an
Right.
expression that you use. Could you
Yep.
share some examples maybe of your own work over the course of your life that really can speak to that skill of being a lifelong learner and the importance of it?
Sure. So a couple of things. It doesn't really matter whether you're in the military or in another organization, or even if you're just in high school. One, read a variety of books. Even though my favorite was science fiction and fantasy, I read all kinds of other stuff. And as you get older, start getting into business books. And I read many of those. And what I would do to try and reflect, there's a quote later on about reflecting out what you've learned. So I would write a book report, a mini 2-pager, to share with the rest of the leaders or people on my team, so that any of the knowledge I'd gained, the little tidbits, at least I had an encapsulated view of that without having to read the 800-page book that I read. So make it broadly, learn about business. But here's the thing: if I had to do it over again, I would take as many psychology classes as you can. I've learned so much about people and personalities and psychology and psychology strategies to use in different situations. I'd encourage you to take as much psychology or read about it as you possibly can.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Also, could you talk a little about the leadership model, the DCA teaching, and is it COE ropes and knots? Can you talk about that aspect of it?
Excuse me. Yes. So one of my last assignments in corporate America was running an SAP, which is an enterprise software center of excellence. So we had some of the best folks from the project then transition onto the center of excellence team. And so one of the ways I tried to create an atmosphere of learning without it being too threatening is I would teach them about ropes and knots. So I, at home, chopped up some rope line into 2-foot chunks and whipped the end. And whipping is when you make sure it doesn't fray. And I gave those to each of my folks. And so we would learn a knot, but it wasn't me teaching. Every one of my folks could take a knot that they found interesting and then teach it to the rest. Because if you can teach someone else what you've learned, then we know you've got it, right? You've truly learned, and now you've transmitted that, excuse me, to other folks. So therefore, you just multiplied the learning feature to everyone else. So we did that. We learned a new knot every time for probably about 6 or 8 staff meetings that we did that at once a week or something like that. And there were so many comments, even people like me that were Boy Scouts, but others in my team, they said, I never learned that knot before, but that was really interesting learning it. And there were people that had no idea how to tie even the most basic knot. And they said, wow, I feel a lot more confident now that I can do this. Especially there's a knot called a bowline. That's the most safe knot to use for rescuing because it will never bend or break,
Wow.
so it doesn't slip. So those are the kinds of things that I encouraged and brought to the table. So they're little ceremonies, they're little practice sessions, again, to broaden people's knowledge. So what was I broadening their knowledge about? About teamwork, about learning. So I was emphasizing a lot of the points that I wanted to bring across in building a really healthy team, a really empowered team. And that was one of the ways that I did it.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And then could you talk more in the book? You have a whole section that's really devoted to firefighting methods as well, right? And how would you say
Right.
that relates to leadership?
So I have to give you a little quick fire lesson. So essentially there are 4 kinds of fires. There's class alpha fire, which is like paper burning in a basket. You can easily put it out with water. There are electrical fires that you have to put out with like carbon dioxide or chemical. There are Bravo fires, which are when you have like oil or gas. So you got things that can spread real quickly. Well, you've got to use different methods with that. And then last but not least, a lot of people don't know are metal fires. So when you have magnesium or sodium, once those things catch on fire, they don't need oxygen to burn. So they will just, they'll melt through entire ships, your house or a ship structure, a floor. And the way you put that out is you put sand or something like that around it to crystallize it and stop the burning process. So, because otherwise, boy, it gets out of hand when you take those off a metal fire. So those are the firefighting, skills. But how does that relate to leadership? Well, much as each different type offers different ways to put it out, leadership skills are sort of like that. You might have some basic skills that everyone should have. That might be closer to, and that's how I kind of put it together in the book. That might be more like a class alpha fighter. You just need water. So those might be the very, very basics of leadership, such as being able to communicate, right? One-on-one or something like that. Whereas when you're talking about a leadership skill to be able to conduct strategic discussions and then understand that and present that, that's more like a class D fire, because you got people that aren't strategic have to work a lot longer to figure out how to do that, and putting that fire out is more complex. So I kind of go up in level from A to D on what leadership skills might look like for that.
Got it. So like the ABCD of the different models as well of the type of fire leadership skills you would say for each type of situation. Got it. Makes sense.
And again, analogies or pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? Or more than 1,000 words. So just right now, we've put in people's mind the idea of fires, and we've linked that to leadership. So whether they know it or not, there's already been some memory burning in their cells that they might be able to recall later on as they listen or watch to the cast. Oh, I remember what he was talking about. Fires graduated from a little bit easier fires to much more complex. And he talked about leadership. That's how you learn.
Got it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Tony, we still have a few minutes left in the show. What else do you want to share that we didn't get to get across today about you and your services?
I think.
Don't forget, lead left, grow right.com. Just to remind everyone.
Maybe to talk about our next podcast. We're going to have several of these. So I think we have another 7 after this. So coming up next time, let's talk about maybe chapter 3, which is about being the light in the darkness for others to follow, and how you as a leader, you need to be able to show others through your vision, and then also through your actions and the steps that you take to bring people along with your fire. If you're hunting through a cave or something, you have the only candle, that's what I'm kind of talking about.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. Looking forward to that again next week. Tune on in for that. It'll be the light in the darkness for others to follow. Tony Marolt, if people want to reach out to you, how can we do so?
Through the website, leadleftgrowright.com. Use the contact form. Contact me directly at tony.marolt, Marolt, @gmail.com, or call me at 816-694-4656. I'd love to hear from you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for having that in the background. It's exciting to remind myself and to see it, seeing is believing, and to establish, to remember. It's a mental thing. Some people are visual, some people audio, but
right.
I'm a visual person. So
right.
also.
So that's why I put a mixture of both, Jill. I put pictures and I put words.
Love it. And the color coding also helps. And again, to obtain a copy of your book.
Lead Left, Grow Right, or the Leadership Quotient, and it can be found at Barnes & Noble or online, and then these podcasts can also be found on the Podcast News Network, the Business Network, or you can find them on Spotify as well.
Absolutely. You have a great day. Pleasure speaking with you again, Tony
Thanks,
Marolt.
Jill.
Thank you
See
for
you next
everything,
week.
for your service too, most importantly, and for teaching us what you have learned. I mean, just to take away a little bit of what someone like you with all your years of experience in the Navy, my goodness, it's an honor. And, thank you for doing that and teaching everyone. You have a great day. And to all of our listeners, the same. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.